Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast. Joining me today on Calgary's podcast is Jason Hardy, who is co-founder and CEO of Only. Thanks for joining us today, Jason.
Mario, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Only first of all, and what the company is, what it does.
Yeah, so Only is removing friction from the home buying process. We've been often compared as the Shopify for real estate, and we're bringing, allowing consumers the ability to remove doubt from the buying process by helping them transact more of the real estate process online.
So, so this is bypassing realtors, or
No, absolutely not.
talk
It's
about
actually
how it works.
Yeah, so it is actually a sales enablement tool for realtors. So we work with agents, we work with brokers, we work with builders, developers, new home salespeople, and it allows them to actually get consumers off the market and into their sales pipeline faster by removing friction. So we have two really main products within our technology. One is our buyer verification platform. It allows consumers and buyers to be able to have a seamless experience and discover their buying power in under 3 minutes without going through the mortgage pre-approval process. So it's a patented technology. We've got 3 US, Canadian, and international patents on our technology. And it allows consumers the ability to discover their buying power, understand what they can afford in under just a few minutes without doing that mortgage pre-approval. And then the second tool that we have allows a consumer to take a home off the internet, add it to their digital shopping cart, place a deposit, and sign a reservation agreement all within just a few minutes, completely online.
Wow. How did this come about?
Well, I've spent the past 22 years serving the home building and land development industry. So I felt like I spent an entire career watching the real estate industry, continue to do what it does. And if anyone knows anything about real estate, you know that it's a pretty old school, archaic industry, very set in its ways. The things that work today and the things that are the tools that are being used today, in large part, are the same tools that were being used 30 and 40 years ago. And so we saw an incredible opportunity. Real estate is truly the last B2C industry on planet Earth to digitize the buying process. So we saw an opportunity to remove friction from the buying process, to create a more seamless experience so that sellers could really meet customers where they wanted to be. 90% of buyers that are looking for homes today begin their search online. And so it was inevitable that more of these buying tools and buying decisions would start to happen online, making a much more enjoyable in-person experience for the seller, so they can really focus on building a relationship and leave the red tape and the administrative paperwork to a web application like Only.
So just curious, some factual stuff here first, Jason. When did you start?
So the company is 2.5 years old. The company was formed in January of 2021. And we started probably about 6 months prior to that with what they call our MVP, or a minimum viable product of the technology. And once we kind of realized we were onto something, we formalized the company at the beginning of 2021.
And what's your reach now, like in terms of where it's available?
Yeah, so we have customers all over Alberta, British Columbia, Georgia, Texas, and Florida. We're just moving into the US market now. Our first iteration of the platform, we've had over 100,000 users of our technology in the first year and a half that we've been live. And we're quickly moving into the US market right now. We have a US team and bringing on, many US customers on a quarterly basis.
So I'm just curious, how did the idea come? Did it just, you're sitting at the bar one day having a drink and go, boom, I got an idea here. Where did it come from?
Honestly, the process is interesting. A lot of the inspiration from the real estate industry comes from a similar industry, which is the automotive industry. And so the automotive industry was allowing consumers the ability to shop online 20 years ago. And so I went through this process, and this was going through a number of years ago, but I hadn't purchased a new car for about 13 or 14 years. I was driving around the same jalopy, and it was time living in Alberta, you can't live in Alberta without having a pickup truck. So it was time for Jason, after being here for 20 years, to finally invest in buying a pickup truck. And so it was the first new car that I had purchased in a long, long time. And I went online onto the website and I built and priced this Toyota Tacoma. And I built and priced the whole thing online. It told me exactly the dealership that had that vehicle. It told me the exact price. And I remember I got into my car. I went to the dealership with a printed out pieces of paper that I had built this vehicle on online. And I said, this is the car. I know that you have it and I would like it. And they brought the car out, and 30 minutes later, I drove away with my new truck. And the whole experience of buying that car, predominantly online, was mesmerizing to me. I was blown away. I came back into the office. I was holding my keys. I said, look, I built and priced and purchased this car almost entirely online. And everyone laughed. Everyone said, Jason, you've been able to do that for years. Like, welcome to the 21st century. And it was news to me. And it was at that moment a light bulb went off in my brain and thought, if you can build and price and buy a car online, why shouldn't we as consumers be able to do the same thing with a home? And that was really the infancy of the idea for Only.
Yeah, I guess if you're a business or even an industry, as we're talking about real estate, if you're not in tune with what's happening now, you're going to be left behind, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you can either lead or you can be a leader or a laggard. And, I think the real estate industry is full of innovators. In particular in Alberta, there's a lot of like big name brands like, Shane Holmes, Shane Wenzel, or Jamin.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great brands that really have prided themselves on being innovators in the market and bringing the newest in technology, green building, solar innovation. And so, yeah, I mean, this is an industry that is filled with innovators, and this is just yet another innovative product for the market.
Why do you think the industry took so long to adapt and change?
I think because it's working. I think, the way in which a home has been sold and a home has been purchased has not changed in,
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 years. And it's been working just fine. Home builders do just fine. I think realtors and agents do just fine. And the process by which they follow today is largely the same as it was, a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades ago. And it works.
Yeah.
So a lot of the response that we've received, especially in our earlier days, is, well, there's nothing wrong with our process. The way we've been doing it for years works.
Yeah.
But the challenge is in this post-pandemic world, the pandemic really did expedite consumer demand for more frictionless experiences. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that. And real estate was no exception in terms of an industry. And so when the pandemic came and went, I think people became more comfortable doing their research and due diligence for things they wanted to buy online. And so that was no different for real estate. So we're starting to see a lot more people looking for more information on that home before they reach out to a salesperson. And
Yeah.
that has stayed, although not all of us are still pulling up to the grocery store and opening the trunk and letting them put the groceries in. We now go back to the grocery store. When it comes to real estate, we're still doing the majority of our research online prior to engaging with the salesperson.
And it's amazing what you can get online, right? Because just taking on the real estate thing, I was actually surprised recently. I was on I think it was the realtor.ca website, right? And looking at different homes, and I was seeing prices that were where the house sold in the past
Yeah.
on some listings. And then I understand that some places are putting actual sold prices on those listings once they've sold. So it's really changed dramatically in the last couple of years, right? I guess the transparency is a huge factor right now.
Yeah, trust and transparency is absolutely key. But the number one villain in the story of buying and selling real estate is doubt. Our job at Only, and the problem that we are really solving for, is removing doubt from the home buying process. And when you remove doubt, you create confidence. And that is, it doesn't matter if you're buying your first home or your fifth home, it's still a process that's wrought with doubt and a process that lacks a lot of confidence. People are unsure of what they can afford. And so when we went through building our buyer verification platform, what we realize is a lot of people that start shopping for a home don't go and get that mortgage pre-approval right away, because it's a pretty scary, daunting process. No, everybody knows you have to go and gather all your information, your NOAs and your T2s. And if you're in the US, it's your W2s, and you spend weeks gathering all your financial data. And then you have to submit it to someone and they analyze it and then they tell you what you can afford. And so a lot of people, what we were realizing, were starting their shopping journey without really having a clear understanding, without having the confidence to know what it is that they could afford. And that's where we came up with Only Verified, which is our buyer verification tool, where a seller, an agent, a realtor, a real estate sales representative can send a link out to a consumer and they can discover their buying power in under 3 minutes without submitting any financial tax documentation. It's pretty cool.
So where did this interest in real estate start for you, and why?
Yeah, that's a really good one. So for me, this goes back longer than I want to admit, and it'll give away on my age, but it was about 24 years ago. I had finished working for the Walt Disney World Company in Orlando, Florida.
Wow.
And when I was coming back from Disney, I decided, I was originally from Ontario, from Hamilton, Ontario. And I had a friend that I had met in Disney that said, you should really come to Calgary. It's the next great city in the country. And, my typical narrow-minded Ontario-born child, I'd never been west of
Yeah.
Ontario. If we went on vacations, you were in Mexico or Cuba or Florida, nobody was ever coming west.
Trust me, I know. I'm from Ottawa, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
So, he had said, come to Calgary. It's the next great city in this country. And, I had nowhere else to be. And I thought, sure, I'll give it a shot. And so I moved to Calgary. And, I was blown away by the entrepreneurial spirit and fire in the city and the amazing people. I met some incredible mentors that ended up becoming, very close friends of mine later on in life, that extended a helping hand to me when I had first moved here. One of them was Jim Button,
Oh yeah.
and the other one was Pat Ottman from Business in Calgary. Two great, amazing Calgarians. And I came here and I was looking for work and looking for a job. And I was hired by a local real estate marketing agency. The company was called Applied Communications. They're not around anymore, but it was started by a serial entrepreneur by the name of Dan McWilliam, great Calgary legendary business guy. And, I went to work for this company as a junior marketing coordinator, and I managed a small portfolio of resorts and private community customers in the United States. And very, very fortunate. And I fell in love with real estate. I literally fell in love with the fact that, they're not making any more land. Real estate was something that was really special. Most of these master plan community development projects would take 20 to 30 years to be built.
Oh yeah.
And, we were working on these projects for years and years at a time, building these incredible relationships. And I just became very passionate and very enamored with the real estate process. And at the beginning of my career, I didn't know much about real estate, but I learned a lot from Dan McWilliam. And then I joined two organizations that kind of changed the world for me. One was the Urban Land Institute, based out of Washington, D.C. I later went on to the board for the Urban Land Institute in later years. And the other one was the Canadian Home Builders Association. Those were the two where I sort of cut my teeth and realized that this was an industry that I really wanted to stay in for the rest of my career. And now, again, back in those days, it was very unusual for someone to come to Calgary and not get into oil and gas or energy.
Yeah, exactly.
People thought, are you crazy? Get into oil and gas. You can make so much money. It's easy. But honestly, I fell into real estate. I fell in love with real estate. And, that love and passion for this industry has never weaned. It's just still an industry that I'm incredibly passionate about.
So I'm curious, what did you do at Disney?
So I worked in the International Fellowship Program. I worked in Epcot, and I worked in the Canadian Pavilion in Epcot. So if you've been down there, there are 12 countries represented in the World Showcase in Epcot. And in each one of those pavilions, the people that are working in that country's pavilion are actually from that country. So I was working in the Canadian Pavilion.
Oh, cool. So you mentioned just before about Calgary's in entrepreneurial spirit that you witnessed when you first came here. Do you still think it's there?
Ugh, I think it's brighter and better than ever before. I love this city. I mean, I've traveled all over the world, and I always get excited to come home. This is my home. I'm not moving anywhere else. I love the city. I love the people in the city. And I think that the entrepreneurial energy in this city is second to none. There's just something special about Calgary. And I guess the way that I would describe it, coming from, the Toronto, the GTA area, I always felt like Calgarians were selfless. Those that have been very successful in this city are always willing to lend a helping hand,
Hmm.
and if there's another entrepreneur that was, starting at a lower position in life or hadn't really accomplished the success that they had, people were very selfless in their desire and willingness to help others achieve success without expecting something in return. And that type of selflessness, that type of incredible entrepreneurial passion and willingness to give back and help others, help the future leaders of tomorrow, is something that I've never experienced anywhere else in the world.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question here because this is something I've discussed with people over the years. When you mentioned that, there was an era there of the guys that that made the millions, so to speak, in the oil patch, right? And their names are everywhere. You go the hospitals to sports arenas to whatever. They've been part of the community, well known, given back to the community.
So much.
One of the questions I had is the next generation after those guys. What happened to them? I don't. Man, maybe I'm overstating it, but I don't see the same selflessness
Hmm.
today that maybe was there 10, 20 years ago. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I feel like the next generation, they're making their money today.
Yeah,
They're just starting to make that money. I mean, we've gone through a bit of a downturn. We've had a
yeah,
bit of a blip in the radar in Calgary and Alberta, but the market's back. The real estate market's on fire.
yeah,
Energy and oil and gas is back and on fire. And I think that the future leaders that are giving back are about to do so. I think they're here. I just think they're in the trenches right now, working really hard, making all that money to be able to give it back. But I've spent many a years now, volunteering my time on the management advisory committee at the Haskayne School of Business. I also teach in the MBA program at Haskayne, and it's incredible to see the number of community leaders that have stepped up to support the business school, that have stepped up to support the University of Calgary, and truly given selflessly, and,
yeah,
and millions upon tens of millions of dollars to help create those future leaders of tomorrow. I can name, a handful of them off the top of my head, but I think they're right here. It's the Hunter family. It's the Dick Haskaynes of the world. It's the Ron Mathesons of the world. I mean,
yeah,
Mike Timms. I mean, there's a lot of these leaders that have done very well. They're starting to retire, slow down in their career, and they're looking and saying, "How can I give back to this community?" And
yeah,
they're doing it, bigger and bigger than people have done before them.
yeah. So, when it comes to the technology and innovation sector in Calgary, do you think today, you're in a sector that I think today there's more interest in, there's more support in than, say, even 5 years ago, right?
Yes. Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, there is more. Calgary is becoming a tech hotbed. It's becoming, we have an incredible tech ecosystem filled with really brilliant, smart tech entrepreneurs and innovators and incubators and investors. And I was very fortunate to have gone through the CDL program, the Creative Destruction Lab.
yeah,
We were one of, only a handful of companies chosen of hundreds to go through the CDL program, and we graduated. We were one of the handful of companies that graduated the program from across Canada. And I still am to this very day blown away by the number of new tech companies that are being formed right here in our own backyard in Calgary. It's really impressive.
I guess it's, easier right now, right? Because in the past, as you said, and we've all experienced it, there's oil and gas, everything was oil and gas, right? But
Yeah.
now there's the opportunities and growth in that sector. So that's creating a lot more opportunities as well out there, right?
Then there's tons of support programs. You look at
Yeah.
Alberta Innovates as a program, there's nothing like it in the
Yeah.
country. And then you look at other local programs, Sandy over at Intergen. Intergen is a phenomenal program investing in Alberta based startups. And
Mm,
there's some phenomenal companies within their portfolio of tech companies that they're investing in. So I think the support infrastructure and ecosystem here is thriving and has never been more optimistic about the future of Alberta and specifically Calgary-based tech.
mm. So if you had a young tech guy come to you and say, I've got an idea, I want to be an entrepreneur, in this city, what advice would you give
Whew, I think they should sleep on it for a week.
him? Yeah.
I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is the fifth venture that I've
Wow.
started in this city. This has definitely been the most challenging. It's definitely been the most stressful, and it's not for the faint of heart. Um, it's not for everyone. This is a really tough road because you have to move so quickly. And in particular, like with Only, we have raised private equity and venture capital investment, and that forces you to move even faster. And
Yeah.
when you're spending someone else's money and people have bet on you as the horse, you need to deliver. And there's an immense level of pressure that comes, I think, in being a private equity venture backed tech company where there's an obligation and a commitment to perform and do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's for everyone. I think those that think of, hey, I've got this really cool idea, I want to start a tech company. I think there's a lot of easier paths in life than being a tech startup and a tech founder. I think it's, um, this is my 18th year of being an entrepreneur in this city, and we're only 2 years into Only, but this has been the most trying, stressful, scary 2 years of my life. I've never felt pressure like I feel today, and the sense of obligation to succeed and be able to deliver on the vision that we've created for Only.
Okay. So what do you do, aside from that, to kind of de-stress yourself and try to, get some downtime away from work?
Yeah, honestly, well, we're very fortunate to live in one of the most beautiful backyards on the face of this earth. People come from all over the world to see the Rocky Mountains, and we're so blessed to have it 20 minutes from our door. So I spent a lot of time in the mountains. I spent a lot of time outside. I'm with my kids. For me to disconnect from work, I spend time with my kids and just trying to be the best father that I can be. My kids play competitive lacrosse in the city, so I try to be a great assistant coach and just being there. We have a limited number of summers and Christmases and time to spend with our children. So when I'm not working, I'm with my amazing family.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thanks, Jason, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mario. Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Jason Hardy, who is co-founder and CEO of Only. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast. This has been Calgary's podcast. Thanks for joining us.